Children like you need to learn where you belong. The sentence cracked through LAX Gate 42 like the snap of a whip, sharp, cruel, unmistakably intentional. Before anyone could even process the venom behind the words, Rachel Morrison's hand thrust forward, shoving 12-year-old Nia Robinson right off the boarding stairs. A scream tore from Nia's throat as she stumbled, legs tangling, small hands flailing at empty air. She hit each metal step on the way down before crashing onto the concrete. Murmurs erupted. Gasps cut through the airport buzz. A few people froze mid-movement, suitcases left rolling, coffees trembling in hands. Blood seeped through the shredded fabric of Nia's tights, creating a dark smear over her scraped knees. Through the shocked crowd, Danielle Robinson pushed her way forward, dropping to her knees beside her daughter with a calmness far scarier than rage. "Nia, baby. Look at me," Danielle whispered, her voice barely holding steady. "I didn't do anything wrong. Mama!" Nia trembled, her breaths shaky and uneven. "I know," Danielle murmured, brushing hair from her daughter's face. Her movements were gentle, but her jaw was clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Passengers hovered, unsure, whispering. Did the attendant really push her? She must have tripped. Why such a big scene? People record everything nowadays. And phones did rise, several of them. From the top of the stairs, Rachel descended, posture stiff, chin lifted as though she had done absolutely nothing but her job. "You need to teach your daughter to board properly," Rachel said sharply. This wouldn't have happened if she followed instructions. Her colleague nodded, arms crossed. "People like you always turn simple procedures into drama." Danielle lifted her gaze, slow, controlled, devastatingly steady. "I need your supervisor," she said. "And medical attention for my child," Rachel scoffed. "Your daughter blocked the line and she fell. Don't accuse us because you can't control your—" Danielle raised her phone, deliberately, recording her face, her badge, her uniform. "No anger, no yelling. Just certainty," Rachel's smirk faltered. "You can't record us like this," she snapped. "This is a public area," Danielle replied quietly. "I can record anything I see." The colleague rolled her eyes. "Here we go again." Always playing victim, Danielle's phone buzzed. She glanced once, then made a call, her voice shifting into something cold and professional. "Gloria, I need an emergency complaint drafted." "And pull the Sierra West Airlines fuel supply contract." "Yes, the entire thing. Focus on ethics violation clauses." Passengers stopped pretending not to listen. Rachel blinked, confused. Danielle continued. "Highlight the sections tied to our $847 million annual agreement. I'll send the recording in 5 minutes." And just like that, the atmosphere at Gate 42 changed. No one knew who Danielle truly was, but they were about to learn. Because while Rachel thought this was another incident she could brush aside, she had just pushed the wrong child and insulted the wrong mother. The tension inside Gate 42 hung thick enough to choke on. Passengers who had pretended not to notice were now openly staring. Phones tilted. Fingers hovered over record buttons. Something was happening. Something bigger than a simple boarding dispute. Within minutes, a middle-aged supervisor in a rumpled company vest hurried over. His name tag read, Greg Thompson, Gate Operations Supervisor. His face carried a forced, uneasy smile, the kind used by people trained to diffuse situations, not handle accountability. He glanced at Nia's bleeding knees, at the crowd, then at Danielle with a tight, dismissive nod. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset," he began, tone already minimizing. "If you'd like to file a formal complaint, we have a standard process. 7 to 10 business days for review." Danielle straightened, her hand resting protectively on Nia's shoulder. "My daughter was assaulted. I need the security footage and a report filed now." Greg's smile didn't falter. It simply hardened. "We can't release footage on demand. There are protocols, privacy policies, and we need to verify the situation first." "We can't accept your word alone." He said it politely, professionally, but the sting landed all the same. Behind him, Rachel stood proudly, arms crossed, chin tilted upward, as though she were the victim of an inconvenience, not the aggressor. Her colleague whispered something smug in her ear. Rachel smirked. Nia clung to her mother, voice barely audible. "Mama, why are they acting like I lied?" That did it. Danielle rose, her posture shifting from protective mother to something far more formidable. I have witnesses, she said. Video evidence from other passengers. And I'm requesting the footage under California statute. Greg waved a hand lightly. Ma'am, those videos may not show the full context. Kids fall. It happens. Danielle's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting my daughter injured herself on purpose? I'm saying we can't damage the reputation of a 20-year employee without proof, he replied smoothly. Ms. Morrison is highly respected. Rachel nodded, stepping forward. She's lying, and she's trying to make trouble. I followed protocol exactly. You shoved her, a young woman in a blazer called out from the crowd, phone lifted. I have the whole thing on video, the supervisor stiffened. Rachel's expression fractured. Danielle opened her notes app. I'm documenting your refusal to provide footage, your dismissal of my daughter's injuries, and your protection of your staff despite multiple witnesses. Greg's tone sharpened. If you continue escalating, security may escort you out. You're causing a scene. Danielle let out a slow, controlled breath. I'm causing a scene, she repeated softly. Not the woman who pushed a child? The crowd murmured. A few people nodded. Danielle pulled out her phone again and dialed. This is Danielle Robinson, she said clearly. Pull the Sierra West contract. Review the renewal timeline. I believe we're 30 days out. Prepare potential termination documentation. Greg blinked in confusion. Rachel blinked harder. The passengers around them suddenly realized this wasn't just a mother. This was a woman with power. Power they hadn't accounted for, and in less than 20 minutes, someone far higher than a supervisor would arrive. Someone who believed he could intimidate Danielle. He had no idea he was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. 20 minutes later, the air at Gate 42 shifted again. A man in a tailored navy suit strode toward the crowd, accompanied by 2 assistants. His shoes gleamed, his posture radiated authority, and his expression told everyone he fully expected this situation to dissolve the moment he arrived. His gold name badge read, Michael Harrington, Director of Airport Operations. He didn't offer a greeting. He didn't look at Naya. He didn't ask what happened. Instead, he spoke with clipped confidence. I've been briefed. I want this resolved immediately. He surveyed Danielle and her trembling daughter with the same impatience one might have while dealing with a scheduling mishap, not a bleeding child. I have complete trust in my team, he said, voice loud enough to assert dominance. Ms. Morrison has a flawless record. I will not allow her reputation to be damaged by exaggerated accusations, passengers muttered. Phones rose higher. Danielle remained still, her hand on Nia's shoulder. There are witnesses, she said calmly. And videos. Children fall, Michael replied with a dismissive wave. They trip, they dramatize. They get pushed, Danielle corrected. He ignored her. Parents sometimes embellish situations, he continued. I've dealt with incidents like this for years. Some people look for payouts. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The woman in the business suit stepped forward again. Sir, the child was pushed. I recorded it. Michael didn't even turn her way. Ma'am, he said to Danielle, I'm extending you courtesy. Take the next flight. I'll upgrade you both to first class. Let's put this misunderstanding behind us. Danielle stared at him, her expression unreadable. A misunderstanding? She repeated softly. My daughter was shoved down a flight of stairs. Rachel stepped forward, emboldened by the director's presence. She wasn't pushed, Rachel snapped. She faked the fall. People like them always do this. Silence hit like a hammer. Even Rachel seemed to realize she had said too much. But the words were already out. Michael stiffened but didn't correct her. Didn't reprimand her. Didn't even address the bias dripping from her statement. Instead, he doubled down. We're done here, he announced. Either accept compensation or leave the terminal. Nia's small hand gripped Danielle's arm. Mama, why don't they believe me? What did I do wrong? Danielle knelt, lifting her daughter's chin gently. You did nothing wrong, baby, she whispered. Nothing. When she stood, the calm vanished. Something sharper replaced it. She dialed again, loudly. This is Danielle Robinson, she said. Pull the Sierra West Airlines contract. Full termination clause. Review ethics and brand integrity violations. Begin draft notice. Michael frowned. Excuse me? Danielle locked eyes with him. You're about to understand, because what none of them realized, not Rachel, not the supervisor, not even the director, was that Danielle's next phone call would shake the entire airline to its core. The terminal had gone quiet, unnervingly quiet. Even the passengers who moments ago whispered and recorded now stood frozen, sensing that whatever was happening had shifted far beyond a simple airport dispute. Danielle ended her call and tucked her phone away with deliberate calm. Michael, the director, forced a laugh, the kind people make when they feel control slipping through their fingers. "Ma'am," he said stiffly, "threats won't get you what you want. We have procedures." "What I want," Danielle interrupted, "is accountability," Rachel scoffed behind him. People like her always act like they're so important. That made several passengers bristle. A businessman cleared his throat. A teenage boy lowered his hood, recording openly. A mother pulled her child closer, as though recognizing something familiar. Something unjust. Danielle faced Michael fully. "You've dismissed a child's pain," she said. "You've ignored witnesses. You've defended your employee without reviewing any evidence," then with quiet precision. "And you keep assuming I'm powerless." Michael crossed his arms. "I've told you, this is a standard process." "You can't demand special treatment." Danielle tilted her head slightly. "Special treatment?" she repeated. "No, just basic competence." In decency, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the message, then looked back at Michael. "SkyCore's external legal team is requesting all Sierra West correspondence regarding internal complaint procedures for the past 10 years. Michael blinked. "Sky? Who?" Before Danielle could answer, another voice cut in from the crowd. "SkyCore Energy," a man whispered to his wife. "They're massive. They supply fuel to—" Danielle finished the sentence. "4 major airlines, including yours." Rachel's face drained. Her colleague stepped back as though distance could save her. Michael tried to recover. "You're bluffing. SkyCore wouldn't involve itself in this." Danielle met his eyes with a steadiness that made even the passengers shiver. "I'm not involving them," she said. "I am them." Confusion flickered, then clarity hit him like a freight train. "You—" He swallowed. "You're Danielle Robinson," she said. "Founder and CEO of SkyCore Energy." A stunned wave swept through the gate. Passengers stared, mouths open. Phones trembled in hands. Rachel visibly stumbled back, grabbing her colleague's arm. Michael looked as though the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. You can't be serious," he stammered. "Why?" Danielle asked quietly. "Because you assumed a black woman traveling with her daughter couldn't possibly have power." Michael opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since he arrived, he looked afraid. Danielle stepped forward. Her voice sharpened into steel. "You dismissed a bleeding child. You silenced witnesses. You tolerated discrimination. And then you tried to buy our silence." She leaned in, not angrily, but with surgical precision. "SkyCore is reviewing your contract. All $847 million of it," Rachel gasped, hand flying to her chest. Michael staggered backward, and the passengers, witnesses to everything, no longer whispered. They recorded. But the real shock was still minutes away. An email that would hit every executive's phone at the same time and bring Sierra West Airlines to its knees. By now, every person at Gate 42 knew they were witnessing something monumental. A flight delay was one thing. A public confrontation was another. But a billion-dollar CEO standing in the middle of the terminal, dismantling an airline's arrogance in real time? This was history. Michael's face had gone pale. Rachel and her colleague clung to each other, realizing too late that the script they expected Danielle to follow had officially disintegrated. "Ms. Robinson," Michael stammered, "let's not escalate this further. I'm sure we can reach a—" A chorus of notifications exploded across the terminal. Ding, 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 ding. Dozens of Sierra West employees, from gate agents to supervisors to pilots, just passing through, pulled out their phones in unison. The change in their expressions said everything. Confusion, shock, horror. Michael's phone buzzed violently in his breast pocket. He fumbled it out. One look at the email, and he swayed where he stood. His lips moved. Reading silently, effective immediately. SkyCore Energy is suspending all fuel delivery to Sierra West Airlines. pending full internal investigation of ethics violations involving staff conduct at LAX Gate 42. Findings may result in termination of the full contract under clause 17C. Fuel service pauses in 48 hours. It was signed Danielle Robinson, Chief Executive Officer. Skycore Energy. A collective gasp rippled outward like a wave. Rachel's knees buckled. She grabbed a railing to keep from collapsing. Her colleague's hand flew to her mouth. Eyes wide with terror, passengers weren't whispering anymore. Someone muttered, "This airline is done." Another said, "She just shut down their fuel." A teenager whispered, "Bruh, this is crazy." Michael reread the message 3 more times, hoping the words would change. "They didn't. You can't do this," he sputtered. "Do you understand what shutting down fuel delivery will—" "It will force you," Danielle said calmly, "to take accountability." He shook his head, panicked now. "This is our largest contract. You're threatening thousands of jobs." "No," Danielle corrected. "Your employees are threatened because you allowed discrimination to thrive. You dismissed a child's assault. You protected your favorite employees instead of reviewing evidence." She paused. "Your consequences aren't mine. Mr. Harrington, they're yours." Rachel stumbled forward, her voice cracking. Please!" "I didn't know who you were." "That's the problem," Danielle replied softly. "Decency shouldn't depend on who someone is." Nia shifted beside her mother, gripping her hand. Danielle squeezed gently, reassuringly. "Michael tried one last time, Miss Robinson. Perhaps we should—" "And step into a private office to discuss this." "We don't need an audience." Danielle's eyes were unyielding. "The audience is why you won't bury this." Phones rose higher. Passengers leaned in. "And the world will see exactly how you treat black children when no one's watching." Michael shut his eyes. There was no winning here. Not for him. Not for Rachel. Not for Sierra West. The dominoes had started falling, but the fallout was only beginning, because the next step would move this battle from the terminal, straight into the courtroom. Gate 42 no longer felt like an airport terminal. It felt like a historic moment unfolding in real time. Rachel stood trembling, mascara smudging under her eyes. Her colleague had gone silent, no longer the smug enforcer she was minutes earlier. Michael paced in small, frantic circles, clutching his phone like a lifeline. But Danielle? She stood calm, steady, in control of every breath she took. She crouched next to Nia. "Baby, are you okay to walk?" she asked gently. Nia nodded, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I just want to go home." "We will," Danielle whispered. "But first, I need to make sure no one does this to you, or any child, again." Danielle guided Nia to a chair as Gloria's name flashed across her phone. She answered on speaker for everyone to hear, deliberately. "Danielle," Gloria said, voice crisp, "we've pulled the airline contract. Clause 17C is airtight. If you want termination, we can file within the hour." Rachel flinched. Michael's breath hitched. "And the complaint?" Danielle asked. "Filed," Gloria replied. "Assault on a minor. Civil rights violations. Battery. And I'm preparing a petition for emergency release of airport CCTV footage." Michael nearly dropped his phone. Gloria continued, her tone turning sharp. "We also found something else. Rachel Morrison has 3 prior discrimination complaints on record, all dismissed by Sierra West internal review." The crowd murmured loudly. Rachel's face drained of all color. Danielle didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply nodded, absorbing the information with a steady, almost chilling composure. "File everything," she instructed, including the petition for criminal charges. Rachel burst forward, her voice cracking. "You can't ruin my life over this." "I didn't mean anything by it. She got in the way." "Kids these days—" "Stop," Danielle said, raising a hand with quiet authority. "You laid hands on my child." Rachel shook her head violently. "You people twist everything." A collective gasp exploded around them. Even Michael looked horrified now. Danielle turned to her, voice soft but devastating. "I don't need to twist anything." "You've said enough," Gloria spoke through the phone again. "Danielle, the court scheduled a preliminary hearing. March 25th. They're expediting due to the child victim." Danielle nodded once. "Good." Rachel collapsed into a chair, sobbing now, the weight of her choices crashing onto her all at once. Michael approached Danielle hesitantly, almost pleading. "Please." Ms. Robinson, if Sierra West loses you as a fuel supplier, we can't maintain flight operations. If this becomes public, Danielle cut him off. It's already public. She turned her phone around, showing him the screen, a video posted by a passenger, Nia tumbling down the steps. Rachel's shove. Rachel's voice. Children like you need to learn where you belong. 2,000 shares. 87,000 likes. Thousands of comments. In under 20 minutes, Michael's knees nearly gave out. And that, Danielle said quietly, is just the beginning. Because when March 25th arrived, the courtroom wouldn't just be full. It would be standing room only, and nothing would prepare Sierra West for what came next. March 25th arrived like the opening scene of a national event. Outside Los Angeles Superior Court, reporters lined the sidewalk in thick clusters, cameras perched on shoulders, microphones extended like spears. Protesters held signs, "Believe Black Children," "Justice for Nia," "End Discrimination" in the skies. Police managed the crowd as live news vans circled the block. This wasn't just a court case, it was a reckoning. Inside, the courtroom was already filled beyond capacity, every bench crowded, standing room packed. A murmur of anticipation buzzed, thick and electric. At 8:30 a.m., Rachel Morrison entered with 3 attorneys in tailored grey suits. She looked smaller than she had at Gate 42, hair pulled taut, shoulders rigid, eyes swollen from crying. Her once proud stance wilted under the weight of 100 staring eyes. At 8:45, the doors opened again. Danielle Robinson stepped in. Not as a CEO, not as a woman with 100 cameras watching, but as a mother. She wore a black tailored suit, her natural curls framing her face. Gloria walked beside her, carrying neatly organized folders. Between them held Nia, dressed in the same school uniform she wore the day of the incident. The judge had granted special permission for impact context. The sight of the torn uniform, carefully preserved, stirred gasps across the room. Rachel looked away instantly, guilt slicing across her expression. But Danielle didn't look at Rachel at all. She kept her focus on her daughter. "Are you okay?" She whispered. Nia nodded. "I'm brave." "You told me brave doesn't mean not scared." Danielle smiled softly. "That's right." When they sat, phones buzzed throughout the courtroom. A wave of Sierra West executives leaned over their devices simultaneously, faces draining of color. One by one, CEO, CFO, General Counsel, all stiffened with dawning terror. Because at exactly 8:45 a.m., an email hit their inboxes. "Effective immediately, Skycore Energy is terminating all fuel contracts with Sierra West Airlines. Per Section 17C, ethical breach. Freed hours to lose 67% of their fuel supply. 48 hours before flights were grounded. 48 hours before their entire system collapsed." Rachel's attorneys received the same email. Their faces turned from confidence to dread. The defense attorney stood abruptly. "Your Honor, we request a recess to evaluate new—" Gloria cut in before he could finish, her voice sharp enough to slice concrete. "New information? The plaintiff has been the CEO of Skycore for 8 years. Your team failed to research her background because you assumed she was powerless." A hush fell over the courtroom. Gloria continued, louder this time. "You dismissed her. You dismissed her, child. And you dismissed every other passenger of color who previously filed complaints. Because this airline is built to protect its employees, not its passengers." Rachel began to cry silently. Danielle finally turned to her, not with anger, but with something far more haunting. "You didn't just shove my daughter," she said quietly. "You taught her the world would doubt her pain." Nia squeezed her mother's hand. Danielle squeezed back. But the most devastating blow was still coming, because the evidence Gloria was about to present would expose a decade of buried discrimination. The judge entered promptly at 9:00 a.m., robes flowing, gaze stern as she surveyed the room. The murmurs quieted instantly. Cameras clicked softly from the press benches. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, eyes downcast, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. "Case, Robinson versus Sierra West Airlines. Ms. Martinez?" the judge asked, turning to Gloria. "You may present your opening evidence." Gloria rose, calm and razor-sharp, the kind of presence that didn't need to shout to command a room. Your Honor, she began, this case is not an isolated incident. What happened to 12-year-old Nia Robinson was not a moment of miscommunication, nor a misunderstanding. She lifted a folder thick with documents. It was the predictable outcome of a pattern Sierra West Airlines has ignored, buried, and in some cases, actively protected. She walked toward the large monitor at the front of the courtroom. I will begin, she said evenly. With Exhibit A, the screen lit up, a still image appeared. Rachel Morrison. Then 2 years earlier, confronting a black businessman in first class. The man sat calmly while Rachel stood over him, finger pointed. Posture aggressive. A headline beside the still read, Passenger claims racial profiling after removal from first-class seat. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Gloria continued, clicking to the next slide. Exhibit B, a Latina mother with her young daughter and service dog. Rachel again. Same aggressive posture, same complaint filed. Same outcome, dismissed internally, murmurs grew. People leaned in. Rachel's breathing grew shallow. Next slide, Exhibit C, a teenage boy, brown-skinned. Headphones on, escorted off a plane for non-compliance. Later investigation showed he simply didn't hear Rachel's instructions over the music. And then, Exhibit D, Danielle's daughter, falling down metal stairs, captured from 3 angles by passengers. The room froze. Seeing Nia's body hit the concrete, the flinch, the pain, turned stomachs. Gloria spoke again, voice firm. All 4 complaints were handled by internal review. She held up another document, a review led by the same supervisor present at Gate 42, Mr. Greg Thompson. Greg shifted in his seat in the gallery, face burning. And the result of every review? Gloria clicked to the next slide. On screen appeared a single word, stamped in red, dismissed. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Rachel crumpled in her chair, tears streaming freely. The judge raised a hand. Order. When silence settled, Gloria looked straight at the judge. Sierra West had a documented history of discriminatory conduct, she said. They protected their staff and silenced the victims. And they believed every person they dismissed was powerless. Then, she stepped aside, until they met the wrong Mother! Every camera in the room clicked with purpose, the moment hanging, thick in the air. Danielle sat still, jaw tight. Hand over Nia's. She wasn't celebrating. She was remembering the scream. The blood on the concrete, the disbelief in her daughter's eyes. Rachel's attorney stood, trembling. Your Honor, we request. The judge cut him off. Sit down, counsel. This evidence will be reviewed in full. But the most shocking moment of all came next, when Nia herself took the stand. In the courtroom heard the truth in a child's voice. The judge settled back in her seat, tapping her pen gently against the bench as the murmurs faded. After a long pause, she looked over her glasses at the attorneys. Ms. Robinson, the judge said, voice softening just a touch, is your daughter prepared to testify today? The entire courtroom seemed to inhale at once. Danielle squeezed Nia's hand. You don't have to do this if you're scared, she whispered. Nia shook her head slowly. I want to tell the truth, Mama. Danielle pressed a kiss to her forehead. Okay, baby. I'm right here. When Nia stepped toward the witness stand, she looked impossibly small in the massive courtroom. Her scuffed shoes, her patched tights, her bright eyes scanning a sea of strangers and cameras, but she didn't tremble. She didn't cry. She simply walked forward with quiet courage that made the entire room lean closer. The bailiff held up a hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? Nia nodded. Yes, sir. Her voice, gentle but steady, echoed through the room. Once seated, Gloria stepped closer, kneeling so she was level with the child. Nia, sweetheart, she began softly. Can you tell the court what happened at Gate 42? Nia took a breath. I was waiting to board like everybody else, she said. I wasn't running. I wasn't pushing. I was just standing. Her fingers twisted into her lap. Then Ms. Rachel told me to move faster. But there were people in front of me, so I couldn't. Gloria nodded gently. And what happened then? Nia swallowed hard. She said, Children like you need to learn where you belong. A sharp gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge's expression shifted. And then? Gloria asked. Nia's voice cracked, but she steadied herself. Then she pushed me, hard. I tried to grab the railing, but I fell down the stairs. It hurt. A lot. Danielle wiped a tear. So did several people in the gallery. Gloria let the silence linger for a moment, letting the weight of the child's truth settle. Nia, she said gently, how did it feel when the adults said you tripped? Or that you were lying? Nia looked down at her hands. It felt like... She searched for words. Like I didn't matter. Like I wasn't real, her voice wavered. They didn't listen. They didn't even look at me. They just blamed me. And I kept thinking, if I was different, maybe they would have believed me. Every camera in the courtroom clicked at once. Danielle's breath hitched, not from anger, but heartbreak. Rachel, shoulders collapsed. Makeup streaked, buried her face in her hands. Whether it was guilt, fear, or both, no one could tell. The judge leaned forward, voice unusually gentle. Thank you, Miss Robinson. You were very brave. Nia nodded, wiping her eyes. I just want them to stop treating kids like me like we don't. Imatter, her small voice, carried more power than any lawyer's argument. But the hearing was far from over, because the next witness to take the stand wasn't a child. It was someone from inside Sierra West. And what they revealed would shock everyone in the courtroom. After Nia stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom remained hushed. People weren't just watching a case anymore. They were watching a system unravel. The judge cleared her throat. Ms. Martinez, you may call your next witness. Gloria rose. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Ms. Elena Ramirez, former Sierra West employee. A murmur rolled through the gallery. Elena stood from the back row, a slim woman in her mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a low bun, fingers clasped tightly together. Her nervousness was obvious, but so was something else. Determination. Rachel sat up straighter, eyes widening with recognition and dread. Elena approached the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. When she sat, she looked directly at the judge, not at Rachel, not at the airline executives. Gloria stepped forward. Ms. Ramirez, can you tell the court your position at Sierra West Airlines? Elena nodded. I was part of the Internal Review Committee, the team responsible for evaluating passenger complaints. And how long did you serve on that committee? 7 years, the courtroom leaned in. Gloria continued. Ms. Ramirez, were you involved in reviewing complaints, specifically involving Ms. Rachel Morrison? Elena exhaled slowly. Yes, all 3. Rachel flinched. And what were the outcomes of those complaints? Gloria asked, already knowing the answer. Each one was dismissed as insufficient evidence. And why? Gloria's voice sharpened, controlled but deadly. Elena looked down at her hands. Then she lifted her gaze, courage clicking into place. Because we were told to dismiss them. A collective gasp snapped through the room. Rachel shook her head furiously, mouthing, No. No, that's not true. The judge raised her eyebrows. Who instructed this? Elena swallowed. Director Michael Harrington. Michael jolted as if struck. Gloria pressed on. And what were those instructions, specifically? Elena's voice trembled, but she didn't stop. We were told passengers play the race card, that if we upheld complaints, it would set a precedent. That keeping staff morale high was more important than dealing with... How did he say it? Dramatic flyers. Rachel's attorneys buried their faces in their hands. Elena continued, stronger now. We were told to protect senior staff, especially Rachel, that customer testimonies were unreliable and videos were taken out of context. The summary of every case was drafted before we even interviewed the passengers. Danielle closed her eyes, jaw tightening. Nia leaned into her side. And did you agree with these decisions, Ms. Ramirez? Gloria asked softly. No, Elena replied, voice cracking. I didn't. That's why I left the company last year. I couldn't keep watching people get hurt and ignored. Tears filled her eyes. I have a daughter Nia's age, and I kept thinking, what if one day it was her? Silence flooded the room. Heavy, painful, honest. Gloria stepped back. No further questions. Rachel collapsed back into her chair, crushed. Michael fumbled for his water bottle, hand shaking uncontrollably. Elena had just confirmed what Danielle suspected along. The discrimination wasn't a mistake, it was a practice, and the next moment, the one no one expected, would come from Danielle herself, when she finally stood and addressed the courtroom. The courtroom felt different now, heavier, sobered, shaken. Elena's testimony hadn't just exposed wrongdoing. It had confirmed a rot in the system Sierra West thought would never see daylight. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Ms. Robinson, would you like to make a statement before we move to closing arguments?" There was no legal requirement for Danielle to speak. She could have remained silent. She could have let her lawyers handle everything. But from the moment her daughter fell down those stairs, silence had never been an option. Danielle rose slowly, smoothing her suit with calm, deliberate movements. Every camera turned toward her. Every reporter leaned forward. Even Rachel stopped crying long enough to look up. Danielle approached the podium, not as a CEO, but as a mother. She placed her hands on either side of the wooden stand and exhaled deeply. "When I walked into Gate 42 that day," she began, her voice steady, "I wasn't there as an executive. I wasn't thinking about contracts or power or consequences. I was just a mother traveling home with her daughter." She looked toward Nia, who offered a small, brave smile. "I watched my child fall down a metal staircase. I heard her scream, and when I reached her, blood on her knees, shaking in fear, the woman who pushed her stood over us as if nothing had happened. A ripple of emotion flowed through the room. No apology, no remorse, not even concern." Danielle's voice deepened. "And when I asked for help, they dismissed her. Dismissed witnesses. Dismissed facts. Dismissed us." Her gaze shifted to Rachel, but not with hatred, with clarity. "You told my daughter she needed to learn where she belongs. But she belongs in a world that protects children, not belittles them." Rachel's breath hitched. Danielle turned to Michael. "You told me children fall. You suggested I was exaggerating. You implied my daughter's pain was an inconvenience to your airline." Michael lowered his head. "You saw a black mother and assumed powerlessness. You saw a black child and assumed fault." The courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop. Danielle continued, her composure unwavering. "When I founded Skycore Energy, I built it on values, accountability, integrity, responsibility. I never imagined those principles would be needed to defend my child." Her voice softened. "My daughter asked me a question no child should ever feel the need to ask. Mama, if I was a different color, would they have believed me?" Several people in the audience wiped away tears. "In that moment," Danielle said, voice trembling just slightly, "I realized this wasn't just about her fall. It was about every child who'd ever been told their pain was inconvenient. Every parent who'd ever been silenced by procedure. Every complaint that was buried because it was easier than confronting bias." She straightened, resolve sharpening. "So yes, I used every tool, every resource, every ounce of power I had. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, but because the system failed my daughter, and I refused to let it fail the next one." She stepped back from the podium. "I am here today, not as CEO Danielle Robinson, but as Nia's mother, and I will not apologize for protecting my child." The courtroom erupted, not in noise, but in emotion, respect, tension, sorrow, recognition. The judge took a long breath, visibly moved. But the story didn't end with Danielle's words, because the judge was about to make a ruling that would change everything for Sierra West. And for Rachel. The judge sat silently for a long moment, eyes fixed on Danielle, as the weight of her words settled across the courtroom like dust after an explosion. A tension pulsed through the air, not chaotic, not loud, but tight, electric, waiting for the hammer to fall. Finally, the judge lifted her gavel. "Ms. Morrison," she said, turning her gaze to Rachel. "Please rise." Rachel pushed herself shakily to her feet. Her legs wobbled, her hands trembling so violently she had to grip the table for support. The judge's voice hardened. After hearing testimony from the victim, reviewing the video evidence, considering eyewitness statements, and receiving testimony from a former Sierra West employee confirming internal discrimination practices. She paused. "The court finds sufficient cause to proceed with full criminal charges." Rachel's breath escaped her in a broken sob. The judge wasn't finished. "You are hereby charged with assault on a minor, battery, child endangerment, civil rights violations. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Rachel nearly collapsed, her attorney catching her at the last second. The judge turned her attention to the airline executives in the gallery. The court is also opening an inquiry into Sierra West Airlines for potential systemic discrimination, negligence, and institutional failure to protect passengers. Evidence suggests repeated mishandling of complaints and intentional suppression of racial bias reports. A ripple of murmurs traveled through the press rows, laptops flying open, fingers hammering keys, Michael Harrington's face drained of color. The CEO and CFO whispered frantically, their world shattering in real time. Then the judge looked toward Danielle. "Ms. Robinson," she said gently, "your daughter's courage in speaking today was remarkable. The court appreciates your pursuit of justice." Nia tucked into her mother's side. "Proud, but overwhelmed," the judge continued. "As for civil proceedings, given the evidence presented, this court is advancing the $50 million civil lawsuit to full trial." More gasps. Rachel sobbed harder. "But due to Sierra West's extreme liability and the overwhelming evidence," the judge added, "the court strongly encourages the airline to settle immediately and publicly." The CEO's jaw clenched. He knew what that meant, a public apology, public admission of wrongdoing, public humiliation for the airline. Before the judge could adjourn, Gloria stepped forward. "Your Honor, one additional matter." "Proceed." Gloria lifted a document. "Skycore Energy has officially terminated all fuel contracts with Sierra West, effective immediately. As of this morning, the airline has grounded nearly 40% of its flights." Michael's head snapped up. You've destroyed us." Danielle didn't flinch. "No," she said. "You destroyed yourselves the moment you decided some passengers mattered less." The judge struck the gavel. Court is adjourned. In the explosion of reactions, reporters shouting questions, executives arguing, Rachel sobbing uncontrollably. Danielle didn't move. She simply lifted Nia into her arms, holding her like she was the only thing in the room that mattered, because she was. But the fallout had only begun, because outside the courthouse, the world was waiting, and Sierra West's downfall was about to go public in a way no one could stop. The moment Danielle and Nia stepped out of the courthouse, a wall of flashing lights met them. Blinding, relentless, hungry. Reporters swarmed like waves crashing onto shore, microphones thrust forward. Cameras pointed at the mother and daughter who had just shaken an entire airline to its foundation. Security held the crowd back, but barely. Chants echoed from both sides of the courthouse steps. "Justice for Nia! Protect black children! Accountability now!" On the opposite side, a much smaller group, counter-protesters yelled, "Support flight staff!" "Stop overreacting!" But their voices were drowned out by the larger, louder, angrier movement surging around Danielle. Gloria stepped beside her, acting as both shield and guide. "Stay close," she murmured. Danielle held Nia's hand tight. "I'm right here with you, baby." The reporters erupted the moment they reached the base of the steps. "Ms. Robinson, do you have a statement? Are you satisfied with the charges? Is the airline finished? What message do you want to send to parents across the country?" For a moment, Danielle didn't speak. She simply looked out over the crowd, the signs, the cameras, the people who had taken their pain and turned it into a movement. Then she stepped toward the microphones. "My daughter told the truth," Danielle said calmly. And today the court listened. A roar surged through the crowd. "This isn't just about her fall," Danielle continued. "It's about the countless children whose pain gets minimized, dismissed, or ignored because of prejudice hidden behind professionalism." She looked down at Nia, her voice softening. "My daughter asked me if she would have been believed if she looked different. No child should ever have that question on their heart." Reporters leaned in. "Do you want to see Sierra West collapse?" someone asked. Danielle shook her head. "No, I want to see it change." Another reporter called out. "But your fuel termination has already grounded flights." "That's the price of accountability," Danielle replied. "If an airline can't protect its passengers, especially its children, it has no business staying in the sky." Behind them, Sierra West executives rushed from the courthouse, surrounded by their own swarm of cameras. The CEO was pale, sweat beading across his forehead. The CFO barked into a phone. Michael Harrington shoved past reporters, refusing to answer anything. Then Rachel exited, escorted by officers. Her hands were cuffed. The crowd went silent for a moment as she appeared, disheveled, shaking, makeup streaked. Her eyes darted toward Danielle and Nia. Danielle didn't stare her down. She simply looked at her with a quiet, resolute sadness. Choices had consequences. And Rachel was finally meeting hers. As officers led Rachel toward a waiting vehicle, a reporter's voice rose above the noise. "Miss Robinson, what happens now?" Danielle looked out over the sea of faces. Strangers fighting for her daughter, people she'd never met holding signs honoring Nia's bravery. "What happens now?" Danielle repeated softly. "Now, we rebuild something better." The crowd erupted again, but while the public roared, inside Sierra West's headquarters, a decision was being made. One that would determine the fate of the entire airline. While crowds flooded the courthouse steps, the real shockwave was unfolding miles away inside Sierra West Airlines' Phoenix headquarters. Executives rushed into the boardroom, their faces tight with panic. Phones buzzed continuously, screens filled with breaking news. Igicor terminates fuel contract. Sierra West flights grounded nationwide. Court advances $50 million lawsuit against airline after viral airport incident. Internal whistleblower confirms pattern of discrimination, a sea of bad headlines. No good options. The CEO slammed a folder on the table. "We need to get ahead of this," he barked. Full-page apology? Press conference? Something. One board member cut him off. "Half our fleet is grounded." The FAA wants answers. "Investors are pulling out," another snapped. "We lost 67% of our fuel supply overnight." "You don't apologize your way out of that." The CFO buried her face in her hands. "This is catastrophic." And then an assistant rushed in holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was a live aerial view from a news helicopter, dozens of Sierra West planes sitting motionless on runways across the country, grounded, powerless, empty. "This," the CEO whispered, "is the end." For the first time, he understood what Danielle had warned them about. Their arrogance had fueled their downfall more than any contract termination ever could. Danielle guided Nia into the car, shielding her from the last of the cameras. "Mama, is it over now?" Nia asked softly. Danielle smoothed her daughter's hair. "No, baby." "It's not over," Nia frowned. "But Rachel is going to jail." The judge believed me. Danielle smiled gently. "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making things better for the next child." Gloria approached with a folder. "They've agreed to a public apology," she said. "Mandatory reforms, outside oversight, and a multi-million-dollar settlement." Danielle nodded. "Good. Everything goes public tomorrow," Gloria added. "The entire nation will hear your daughter's story." Nia looked down at her hands. "Will people be nice?" Danielle squeezed her hand. "They'll be inspired." Across the courthouse lot, a group of children held signs hand-decorated with crayons. "We believe you, Nia." "Brave girls change the world." Nia's breath caught. Her eyes shimmered. "Mama, they're here for me?" "Yes, baby," Danielle whispered. "Because your voice mattered. And you taught them theirs does too." The final settlement was reached. Sierra West issued a nationwide apology admitting systemic failures. Rachel accepted a plea deal. Michael was fired. The board was overhauled. Mandatory reforms began. And Danielle, instead of pocketing the settlement, founded the Nia Robinson Justice Foundation, providing scholarships, legal support, and advocacy for children facing discrimination. At the foundation's launch event, journalists gathered again. Nia stood proudly beside her mother, smiling for the first time without fear in her eyes. Danielle took the mic. "This isn't the story of an airline falling," she said. "It's the story of a child rising." Applause filled the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "And let this be a reminder," she added. "Never underestimate the person you dismiss. You never know how high they can rise, or how far they can make the world rise with them." Nia squeezed her mother's hand. Together, they stepped into a future they created, not through power, but through truth. If you want more powerful stories like this, full of justice, emotion, and real transformation, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Comment "justice" below if you believe every child deserves to be heard. Share this story to inspire someone who needs strength today.